All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast, where we're still covering the SEC transfer portal. We've got Tennessee we're covering tonight. If you are liking our content, remember to like and subscribe. We really appreciate the support. We're going to dive right into it. Cody, we'll start with you. I mean, there's a clear favorite transfer here, but we'll talk a little bit about maybe Apron and the others.
Yeah, I'll mention them a little bit later. I'll go with my guy here. I think he's actually one of the more underrated portal gets is Ja'Kobi Gillispie coming from Maryland. I was super high on him last year when he was at Belmont, headed to Maryland, and I think like shot diet wise, I mean, he got a lot different. He was a lot more perimeter centric last year. He like doubled his 3-point attempts from being at Belmont to Maryland last season on lower usage, and he kind of flourished. But I mean, he turned himself into like an elite perimeter scoring talent that I think gives Tennessee a much higher or much better scoring punch at the point guard spot than they've had for 4 or 5 years. Like I think he's that great. I mean, he's a great movement and off the ball shooter with deep range. I mean, he just knows how to get himself open in space, and I think his burst and ability to use screens on and off the ball just make him a plus on and off ball shooter. And scoring, particularly in off ball actions, is really important in the Rick Barnes offensive scheme that uses plenty of off ball motion. Don't necessarily agree with the Rick Barnes offensive scheme, catering to his talent, to the talents that he has on his roster. But I think Gillispie kind of fits this mold right now. I mean, he was a 97th percentile catch and shoot guy, and he was 64th percentile off the bounce as well. Like from the guys that like me and Marcus have scouted, I don't really think there's many that really flourish both on and off the ball. So it's rather impressive. But overall, like, is Gillispie gonna be a dominant on-ball hub? No, I probably don't think he's going to be. But his ability to play on and off the ball, like I mentioned, just gives you a major offensive upgrade over the guy that they had for these last 4 or 5 years in Zakai Ziegler, who I personally haven't been all that high on his offensive game over the 4 or 5 years that he was there, or he wanted the 5th year, didn't get it. But I just think Gillispie is going to give this team a much better chance to flourish on the offensive end more than they did in the past. I mean, I'm not going to knock Zakai Ziegler. He was a fantastic player for 4 years, and he was fantastic in his own way. But I do think it was kind of time for him to walk out the door and bring in a better offensive hub like Ja'Kobi Gillispie. And like I mentioned, he's not going to be like the on-ball usage monster. I think Nate Ament's going to have to take on some of that role. The freshman coming in, I believe he was like the number 5 rated recruit. But I do think Gillispie is going to be able to take on a lot of that usage, more than a lot of people think.
Marcus, let's hear your thoughts about Gillispie.
Yeah, I also really like Gillispie. And if you listen to anything from last season, like I was pretty high on the Maryland team as a whole as we kind of went along, and Gillispie was obviously a big part of that. Really efficient from 3. Like Cody said, I think for me anyway, of all the guys that I've scouted, he's the highest percentile shooter off the dribble. Like most of these guys we've recruited or we've scouted are like sub 30%, 30th percentile off the dribble.
Mostly from a shot diet too, improving. I think that's kind of the biggest thing.
Yeah. But the other thing too, like he's a very strong passer, right? 27% assist rate. But if you dive a little bit deeper, he played 17 top 50 games last year. In those games, 29% assist rate to just a 14% turnover rate. So really good, distributing the basketball, but also taking care of it against top competition. He shot 63% at the rim last year. And he has like great creativity around the rim. He's got a nice floater game. He just has a bunch of different finishes in his tool bag. Like going away from the rim, he makes some floaters sometimes that you're just kind of like surprised they went in. Especially for like a kind of a smaller guard. He's like 6 feet, 6'1". But he's also got pretty limitless range, right? He made like close to 25 threes from beyond 25 feet last year. So that's another area that like you said, Cody, like Tennessee hasn't really had that at the point guard spot. And now they do in Gillispie. I'm pretty excited about them getting him. Like he's going to fit in, I think, quite well.
Let's hear a little bit more about the other transfers, Cody. We'll start with you.
Yeah, and just one final thing about Gillespie before. He's a borderline elite defender as well. Like I kind of scouted him as like almost like a Chucky Hepburn like defender, like with his playmaking ability. I mean, everywhere he's gone, he's been able to make plays. He has a 3.6% career steal rate, and he led both Maryland and Belmont in steal rate by a pretty wide margin. And it was a Belmont defense that didn't really force a ton of turnovers, so it was rather impressive. And I think his on-ball defense isn't going to be like a major drop-off from what Sakai Ziegler brought to the table, although he was probably the best guard defender in the entire country. Maybe like him and like Elijah Martin were 1 and 2. But I think Ja'Kobi Gillispie is going to be able to, provide an impact in that area as well. As for the other guys, like Amari Abram, he's an interesting get here. I mean, where was he coming? Oh, Louisiana Tech. Kind of more of like a two-way 3-and-D piece. He's a drop-off from Jemai Mashak. Like, I'll just say that up front. But I do think he probably provides a little bit more catch-and-shoot ability, a little more stationary catch-and-shoot ability. And in particular, the defense definitely isn't close to what Mashak provided. He's not as much of a physical presence, but his length and like perimeter versatility to be able to guard multiple positions, I think, is going to be key. And then for the last guy that brought in, Jalen Carey, he's going to provide more of an offensive punch at the 5 than he is a defensive punch. Like this front court defense right now looks pretty ridiculous, but the offense might be a little bit limited up front with Cade Phillips and Felix Okpara. I think Jalen Carey is going to be able to come in, play some spot minutes, get all over the offensive glass, and allow them to bring some value in that area. I think he's going to be a really solid play finisher, solid in pick and roll as a pick and roll man, being able to finish at the rim, getting to the line. I think that's where he's going to make his most impact. And he's going to be able to play alongside guys like Phillips and Nate Ament, and probably no 3 big lineup with like Phillips at the 3. I don't really see that happening, but I do think Carey is going to be big for maintaining that offensive rebounding value that Tennessee's brought the last few years.
Marcus, let's hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, like Cody said, I think Abram, like solid shooter last year, 161 attempts, 37% from 3. He's at his 4th school in 4 years. That was just something I wanted to throw out there. So he's bounced around, but I think he can fit in quite well here on both ends of the floor. And then as for Carey, right, he's a good rebounder, like Cody said, over 12% offensive rebound rate, 20% on defensive glass. Not really a great shooter, but he did show some. Like it's not an ugly shot by any stretch. Like I think if he has worked on it this offseason, he has some like room for growth there. He was 9 for 39 from 3 last year, so right around 25%. I think there's potentially some room there. But he's like a physical like player at the rim. But he'll get to the line a bunch. He just isn't great there either. Like what was he last year? Mid-50s%. So like if he can improve as a shooter in particular, I think that he'll provide a lot more value to this Tennessee team.
So what do we think their ceiling could be this next season, and as well as what do we expect from them? How do these guys fit into the roster? Cody, I'll have you take it away.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few big takeaways for me. I think it's mostly like the swing skills, or the swing pieces are Ja'Kobi Gillispie and Nate Ament. Can they be like a high level SEC duo, and can they be great on ball creators like I think they can be? Nate Ament, not so sure of yet, like from an efficiency standpoint, but I am super high on Ja'Kobi Gillispie, at least for what he brings at the guard spot, what he brings as a creator. It's not going to be like elite value in a half court setting, but it's going to be better than what they've had in the past. So for the floor is obviously going to be really high. It's always been high with the Rick Barnes team. The defense is going to be elite. it's probably guaranteed to be a top 5 defense in the country. And I mean, the front court defense, like I mentioned, like the rim protection is ridiculous. They have 3 different guys that can defend in space at a high level and protect the rim at a super high level in Ament, Phillips, and Okpara. So I'm not worried about the defense. It's the offense that's always been the issue, at least for the last, 5 or 6 years with Rick Barnes. Like it just hasn't, like even when he had Dalton Connect, it was a problem. They finished 35th overall in adjusted offense per Torvik. I think
goes stagnant, right? It goes stagnant too often in like big games.
Yeah, and part of it's the system, like I mentioned. I just think all of the off-ball motion, not prioritizing like your on-ball usage with now that they have it with Gillispie, I think they have more upside, which is what I'm trying to say. It's hard for me to say they have championship upside with the other pieces on this roster from a shooting perspective. Like I'm not all that high on Abram as a catch and shoot guy, and the rest of the roster just doesn't really shape up to provide any secondary qualities. So a lot of the load is going to be on Gillispie and immense on-ball creation, and then the ability to create second chances and take care of the ball. They really need to win the extras to have a real chance to go deep in March. But I'm just so high on Gillispie that I think this team has Final Four upset.
Marcus, do you agree with Cody?
I don't know if I see Final Four. I think because of the floor that they're going to have, I think it's certainly within reach. So I guess I would agree. It is, there is upside for that. The defense is going to be good. They've got the floor that is always going to be much higher just because of the way they play and as good as the defense is going to be. And I think the offensive glass, they're going to be able to create a lot of opportunities there. That will significantly help them, particularly, in the SEC. But, I really think because of the floor at worst, obviously we've talked about with other teams, you can lose any tournament game, but I feel like Sweet 16 is the worst they could do. But obviously you can lose at any point in March, but just looking at this roster with the experience they have, and Gillispie and Ament, I think that Sweet 16 seems like a safe spot to say that they're going to at least get there.
Any final thoughts for the Volunteers before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I think they're a top 3 team in the SEC. I think it's between Tennessee, Kentucky, and who's the third? Florida at the top. I think those teams are pretty firmly my top 3, with some other teams like Alabama and Auburn just slightly behind. But I think Rick Barnes and the defensive scheme and just the rim protection that they have on this roster is going to give them a super stable floor. I don't see them finishing below the top 5 in the SEC.
Marcus?
Yeah, I would agree with Cody there. I'm excited to see Gillispie kind of have his own team to kind of rock with. Last year he had Maryland, there are a bunch of guys there. They had 5 guys that could all kind of get 20 any night. And now, he's going to be more heavily relied on. So I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table here.
Exciting year to come for the Volunteers. As always, thank you for listening to the Manly Hoops Podcast.